Happy New Year and welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. More and more Canadians are deciding that they don't want kids. In fact, the data shows that this is a growing trend in this country. Here to explain the trend and what's motivating more Canadians to go child-free is a senior staff writer for the Daily Hive. She is Simran Singh, and this conversation is supported by Shelter Point Single Malt Whiskey, distinctly Vancouver Island, uniquely Shelter Point. So Simran, you dug into this. What is this trend with regard to Canadians not having kids? Explain it to us.
Yeah, Mo, I got into this series out of curiosity for myself.
Okay.
I'm now in my 30s and I've been married for several years and kind of reaching the age where you're like kids. So I started to kind of connect it to my work a little bit and see if people were choosing to have kids and those who weren't, why? And before we delve into this conversation, I do want to make clear that there's many people who want kids but cannot have kids,
right,
and struggle with fertility and loss. And, that is such an important subject that I don't want to glaze over. But for the sake of the story that I'm talking about today, it's about women specifically who have chosen not to have children. And as you mentioned, we're seeing it a little bit more, especially in Canada. I have some stats to shoot at you.
Okay, hit me. Let's hear it.
Stats Canada has definitely given out a lot of information about this in the past year because it seems to be heavy on people's minds. So a February 2023 report from Stats Canada highlights that in 2022, more than a third of Canadians aged 15 to 49 did not even intend to have children. And then in the economic forecast we're looking at right now, Stats Canada talked to some Canadians and they found that between 15 and 29 young Canadians said that the economic climate right now did not even foresee them to have children.
Okay, so an affordability thing.
Affordability is a huge thing. And then overall, the agency noted that over the decade, the number of children per woman in Canada has been on a general downward trend, falling from 1.69 in 2009 to 1.43 in 2021.
That's children, 1.69 children on average to
1.43 in 2021. So 2021 is the latest of their data that they collected. So we're seeing children on the downcline in Canada. We're seeing people maybe choosing to wait or choosing to not have kids at all. And I think it has to do with a whole lot of factors.
And before we get into that, I'm really curious, is this a millennial thing or was this a trend that always kind of existed, but maybe it's now more pronounced with our generation, with millennials?
That's a good question. And you know what? I don't know I can have the end-all be-all answer thing here, but I did speak to millennial women for my series, and I think it is becoming a growing millennial thing for a number of reasons when it comes to finances, our economic climate, the environment, and just, I think
The environment?
The environment. Isn't that shocking? It's 10 degrees in winter, but yeah, people are thinking about the climate.
Okay.
Yes.
So because of climate change. So are they doing it because they don't want kids in an environment where you're going to have climate catastrophes, or because they don't want to contribute to a growing population that is fueling climate change?
Maybe both of those things, because, I think a lot of millennials are thinking about when their parents had kids. It was a different time. Gen X, a lot of them were immigrants. They came to this family with the purpose of building a family. A lot of us also saw our mothers and what they went through, and through a lot of probably therapy and reflecting on our own childhood trauma, we're really thinking about, do we want to bring kids into this world? Are we ready to bring kids into this world? And that's a thought process that I think more millennials are taking on than maybe past generations. We're really doing that self-reflection.
Right. It's interesting because we talk about this idea of overlapping crises, right? The affordability crisis, the climate crisis. And I never thought about this idea of people choosing to have kids or not in that lens, but apparently that's really what's framing these decisions, right?
Yeah, if you want to call it a perfect storm, maybe it is, because right now we're living at a time where there's a lot of different crises.
Sure.
And a lot of people are thinking about what it means for them and what it means for the future. I think when you bring into the fact that a lot of people are struggling to buy homes or afford rent, put groceries in their fridges every week, even trying to secure that job and chase after their professional goals. Those are all things people are thinking about. And then when you bring in, different global crises happening right now, the state of the world, I think it's weighing heavily on people's minds, and particularly to women as well. I think a lot of women are thinking about their lives and what they truly want for them when it comes to their professional goals, what fulfills them. They're thinking about domestic labor. We actually talk about domestic labor now as a society.
Absolutely.
Splitting up chores, the mental load that you have to take on being, a woman in a cis heteronormative relationship. So those are all things that women in particular are thinking about as well. Like, do we really want to do this in the world we're living in? Or are we able to find fulfillment in different ways? Are we happy without kids? And that seems to be the truth for some women.
Now, in your investigative reporting and your interviews and looking at the data, was there one motivating factor that seemed to be bigger than the others, or was it pretty evenly spread out in terms of the reason that people were giving to not have children?
You know what? It's really subjective. But when it comes to the women I spoke to, a lot of women really felt that they never had a maternal instinct, and they found so many passions in their work and things that they wanted to work towards in their life that they just felt that they don't want to have children. And I think that's kind of a driving factor for many women. And then, it's subjective though, right? So it's really independent. It's up to you. It's what impacts your life, what's happening in your life right now. So I don't think there's one particular factor or anything like that we can pinpoint. But, I think for Canadians, it's the affordability factor.
Yeah.
It is really the affordability factor. And I spoke to one scholar out of the University of Victoria, Susan McDaniel, who has researched this and said right now, in the time we're living in right now in Canada, it's definitely the financial issues people are facing. And bringing a kid into the world, it costs money. StatsCan also did another research study this past year, and they found out that raising a child from age 0 to 17 costs approximately $360,000. And then when you add the university,
it's a lot in this economy.
You have the university tuition, it goes up by 29% on average.
Wow.
So it's a lot of money, and it's spread out over a period of time. And it's not to say that if you are worried about finances, I'm sure you can make it work if you really want kids. But if the dollar is on top of mind, then that's something you're thinking about.
Now, obviously, everyone is entitled to their own personal choices, but I do feel like government is going to be looking at this, because obviously government does want people to have kids and create community and all that stuff. And they'll be looking at that and maybe perhaps tailoring some policies to be a more parent friendly country, whether that's $10 a day daycare or, hopefully affordable housing at some point.
Yeah, I think that's something that governments do have to pay attention to, especially, right now in Canada, our Canadian government, there is $10 a day daycare. There are credits for parents, but is it really enough? Like daycare spaces, I'm not a parent, but I hear from, my friends who are parents, how just insane it is for daycare and how stressful it is. And you have to think about daycare before even bringing a child into this world. So governments really do need to think about what Canada is going to look like in the next 50 years. And we have the issue of immigration that's weighing so heavily on people's minds right now. And immigration is one way to bring new workforces and talent into a country. But this is really important in the growth of Canada's landscape over the next century.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Will we see people moving out of the country, people choosing not to have kids? It's kind of an unknown right now, but I would hope that, government officials are looking at this and thinking, how do we make it easier for people who want to become parents? Not only that, how do we make fertility, programs and things like that more accessible to
Totally,
people?
yeah. Especially as people focus on their careers, particularly in their 20s, and look at having kids if they want to have kids in their 30s, right? Fertility and fertility treatments become huge.
Treatments are not cheap, and you have to be privileged financially to, have these treatments and, pay for them. So that's an issue too that I hope governments look into more.
Really quickly, when we think about in general, and this is a general population, not an individual case by case basis, are parents versus non-parents, is there a difference in happiness or overall contentment? Is there something that we can look at and say, well, non-parents actually end up being happier?
That's a great question. And I think if I said an answer, I would light the internet on fire.
Yeah, I'm setting you up. I'm setting you up for disaster.
I'm going to take the very, easy way out and say it's really up to you and your happiness is in your hands. I think a lot of people who don't want to be parents get questioned a lot especially women, get told they're selfish or like they're going to get lonely when they're older. But I think a lot of people who are child-free by choice have thought about those things and they're happy and content with that decision. And people who have kids are happy and content with their decision as well. But one of the last things I want to say is, as a society, what we can do is just generally stop asking people about their status.
Oh, I think we should all be on board for that. Absolutely. We should normalize not asking people or prying about when they're going to have a kid. Simran, this was such a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thanks, Mo.
Folks, make sure you catch her work at the Daily Hive. She is Simran Singh. Thank you to Shelter Point Single Malt Whiskey for supporting local conversations and being the whiskey of choice for parents and non-parents alike. Now, after some business, I wish people Happy New Year for the entire month of January, but is a whole month of New Year's greetings too long? Comedian Dino Archie will travel the low road and tell us when to stop saying Happy New Year, and that's up next.